and welcome to Happy US, the podcast where we explore a little thing called happiness, one awkward conversation at a time. That's my job, the awkwardness. And I am Erin Clare, your host. My guest today is Kimberly Malone, who is Assistant Director of Prison Education at Northeastern University in New York. What? I know that's brand new, the one in New York. Yep. For more than a decade, she has taught incarcerated students and helped lead college programs in men's and women's prisons across medium and maximum security settings. She is also president of Rising Hope, which is a nonprofit providing post-secondary education in New York prisons. Kimberly holds master's degrees in theology and intercultural studies. She's also a certified spiritual director and retreat facilitator with more than 20 years of experience leading retreats, workshops, and reflective learning experiences. Her teaching has included spiritual formation, multicultural modes of spiritual development, financial literacy, and life skills. And during the pandemic, she helped Rising Hope shift to correspondence learning through 15 months without in-person instruction, which is incredible. And full disclosure, Kimberly now is part of my unit at Northeastern before was part of Marymount Manhattan College. So we're just getting to know each other, and what she does is incredible. And I am so glad that my work is a part of that as well. So welcome, Kimberly. I'm so happy you're here.
Thank you. I am excited to have this conversation.
Good, yes. Everybody gets the first same question. What is your definition of happiness?
What is my definition of happiness? I recently had the opportunity to be the graduation speaker at a HSE, like a high school equivalency graduation in one of the prisons. And I told the students, when my friends come to me for dating advice, I really only have one question that I ask them. I ask, are you blooming or are you withering? And I think it's something that people know. And I told the students that it's not just for relationships. I mean, thinking about the places that you hang out, the friends that you keep. I'm regularly inviting people to consider, are you blooming or are you withering? And I think that sometimes can be like a little roadmap for you specifically of where to put your energy or where you're drawn out. And so I would say happiness is blooming.
I like that. Can you be partially blooming, but like one limb is
Absolutely.
really
You could be
withering?
blooming in one area of your life and totally withering in another
That
at the
that
same
part. Don't
time.
look over there. Don't look at that
At the
one.
same time.
Yeah, because I mean, I immediately I thought, am I blooming? Well, yes, in this area, in this area, this area. No, 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 I'm not.
Yeah, I find it's like a good litmus test because like I said, it's so unique. One situation and one relationship sort of draws you out and you can like see who you are in a different way. When I think blooming and I think, I'm so pleased to be in a marriage that's blooming and I feel safe and secure and I feel like I can take risks and be creative, all those things in the context of feeling like I can bloom.
I love that, especially in context of relationships. Like, are you blooming in the relationship? Is that person blooming? Is the relationship blooming at the same time? Like, they have to have all three, right?
All of it. And I think that sometimes we're loyal and we stick in things that are slowly, and you also know what it looks like when someone's withering, like when
Mm.
they're stuck. I know I've been in relationships where I've just playing like, mental gymnastics in my head of like trying to get there or trying to understand or try, and it's exhausting. And I think that takes up our energy.
Yeah. Friendships too. Relationships more broadly that could be with family,
Yeah.
friends, coworkers, your job. You could definitely be blooming or not blooming in that. Yeah,
That's true.
100%.
That's
And so
true.
many contexts depend. Yeah. And I
Yeah.
like that assessment because it's simple. You can apply it to all financially, all different
Yeah.
ways. Are you blooming or not? And it,
Yeah.
it reduces it down to a feeling really, and that's what comes from. Happiness is attached to your feeling about life. Yeah, I
I
like that.
agree.
Has this changed over time, this definition for you? Did it used to be different?
Absolutely. I think my definition of happiness when I was younger was fun.
Mm.
Um, And it was interesting. In my 20s, I ran a volunteer program for recent college graduates. So I would be with these, mostly 22-year-olds for a year. And I found them, I was listening to the way they used the word fun. If they got caught doing something they probably shouldn't have been doing, they were like, we were just having fun. Or if, you saw them after you haven't seen them for a while, they're like, did you have fun last weekend? And I felt like it was a really interesting measure of that our society sometimes uses for, if something was worth doing or excuses, but it didn't really seem deep enough for me.
Mm.
And so I think in my 20s, I started pursuing joy. Very thoughtfully, I was like, what is joy? Because I realized that there are some things that are joyful that are not fun.
Yeah.
But they're deeper than that. And so I think I was sort of seeking something that felt not as surfacey and something that could hold deeper. And then interesting, I think it's shifted again. As you mentioned in my introduction, for the last 10 years, have been doing spiritual direction, which is not a role that too many people are familiar with. But basically, I sit down with, people once a month for an hour and we just sort of pull back the curtains of like what is going on in your spiritual life, in your insides. And it has become a really fascinating space to sort of learn how people other than me are thinking and working. And a question that I find myself asking in that context is, what brings you delight?
Mm.
Because similar to blooming, I think delight is like your fingerprint. Like what brings you delight and what brings me delight are really different things. And especially in the spiritual context, I think that's one of the ways that God speaks to us is through our delight. And so seeking after that and noticing where that shows up in our life is really helpful information, I think, for people to have about themselves.
I'm interested in this concept of spiritual direction because it's relatively new in my experience. It's not something that I had heard about
Mhm.
growing up or even throughout most of my academic life. And
Mhm.
I think I'm probably similar when I think of spiritual direction, it has to come from one specific priest, minister, leader at a specific church. So, how is this different?
Mhm. I mean, there's lots of different forms of spiritual direction. There's actually a website called Spiritual Directors International where wherever you are, you can find someone, and there's folks coming from Buddhist backgrounds and coming from Christian backgrounds and coming from all sorts of different viewpoints. I think it is different than counseling. I think in counseling, you're stepping into a conversation where the counselor is sort of the leader and trying to get you somewhere or trying to help you to see something. And I don't even love the name spiritual direction because it sounds like I know where you're supposed to go.
It's left, and then you turn at the corner.
No, not at all. But I feel like it's this companioning. It's like being with someone through things. Sometimes people come to me um, because there's a disconnect between what they believe and how they're living, and they're trying
Mm.
to navigate that. Some people are coming because they don't know what they believe. I've had one person come who said, I didn't really have much spiritual formation growing up, but I am in a relationship. I imagine we might have kids some days, and I want to be able to have a vocabulary for what I believe to be able to introduce my child into options or experiences. And so that was what motivated them to come. So I have people coming from for all sorts of different reasons, some because they're in a delightful place with God and they want to talk about that, and others because they don't know what they think. And so I really love creating a space for wherever you are and kind of helping. I think the job of a spiritual director, in my opinion, is asking really good questions. And my favorite moments in spiritual direction is when someone says, that's a really good question because it means we're about to enter into like new conversational territory that that person might not have encountered before. And I think we both feel that it's like new and curious and different and connections are being made in new ways. And I love creating spaces for that.
I know, having spent 20 years or so in Arkansas, that any of my Arkansan audience, they hear that and there's going to be a bit of fear and trepidation about anything doing with spiritual direction because that's been used to manipulate in certain cultures and contexts, especially smaller, southern, rural, to make shame people, make them see themselves as bad or sinful, so they'll change their ways. So how do you create a space that's not that, where the
Yeah,
direction isn't your direction, but the direction they want to go?
absolutely. I would probably use that same framework of are you blooming, are you withering? When I was first looking for a spiritual director almost 15 years ago, I sat down with the first person and I felt stilted in the way that I was talking. In a weird way, felt like she was too impressed with some of the things that I was saying. And I was like, this is not the dynamic that I'm looking for. And then I sat down with Carolyn, who has now been my spiritual director for almost 15 years.
Mm.
And I felt safe. I felt like she was a really excellent listener. And I don't cry very easily or often, but I cried in that first conversation out of joy, I think, of being able to talk about the things that I've been longing to talk about. And so I think a huge measure for everyone is being able to really pay attention to how you show up in that conversation. One of the things that I do in my practice is that I always take a break in July and August. A lot of times some people I've been meeting with for years, 8 years, others for a short time. And I break on purpose because I say, I never want this to become just a routine that you're doing without intention. I want you to pause and I want you to re-up and decide if this is still where you want to be because this is for you. This is not for me. I don't want to get into a dynamic of like you're showing up because you don't want to disappoint me or something. I think that people know how they're responding. They may not be able to articulate it, but I think being able to find people that you trust and that feel safe, because you're right, a lot of times people have relished in that maybe role of direction in that space in ways that have been really unhelpful or actually have shut down people from thinking or feeling. And that's not the posture that I'm trying to create. And I think you really have to find someone who is creating the space that you're longing for.
Yeah, and I think you described asking questions rather than
Yeah.
telling what people should do,
Mhm.
asking a lot of questions so it becomes their journey. Um,
Mhm.
and then you can then ask the next question that leads them on the next journey down those roads. And um, to me, it sounds almost like a form of counseling in a way. I don't like that word, but a form of
Yeah.
counseling that allows there to be God involved or a higher
Yeah.
power
Yeah.
that and thinking about our relationship to that and what that means and
Mhm.
how we feel. Does that sound
Yeah.
accurate?
100%. And I feel like it's different than if you go to like a church or a synagogue or a space where you're maybe receiving messaging that's to a crowd. This is very specific to you. And so it can get into the details of your day of like, do you feel invitations from God? Do you feel like a calling, or do you feel, we can have those conversations that sort of place you in a larger picture, but specific to you.
So, how did you get started then in prison education? Was it related to that?
How did I get started? Well, my background has been mostly in the nonprofit space. And I have had roles as, a counselor at a drug recovery program. I have had roles as a, um, program director at a homeless shelter. A lot of these different spaces where I was encountering people who were navigating trauma.
Hmm.
And fast forward to about 10 years ago, I was running a similar a volunteer program for recent college graduates. That's what drew me up to New York. And so here I am sending young people actually around the world to spend a year volunteering in the social service agencies.
Mm.
And I was fairly new to New York. I grew up in New Jersey. I spent significant time in California, maybe a decade in California. I was in DC for a while. So when I moved back to New York, I grew up in New Jersey. I sort of thought I'm coming home. Like there will be people that I know. And actually, the network wasn't as strong as I had hoped. And here I was once again, getting to know people and building friends. And so I was living in Queens and I was taking public transportation to Brooklyn, which, if you know the context of New York, you know that's a long commute. And I was coming home and I was reading a sociology book called Random Families. And this author chose a few random families in the Bronx in the 80s and followed them for like 30 years. So this book rolls out where you get this really interesting view of lives of a community over the course of a few decades. And I was so engrossed in my book that I missed my bus stop to get home. And I discovered that the end of the line, a few stops later after my home, was Rikers Island.
Mm.
And here is the surreal part is that the part that I was reading in the book, there was a character, a woman named Jessica, and she was visiting her boyfriend at Rikers Island. And
Oh,
that was the spot that was
awakening.
intriguing me so much. And all of a sudden, she's getting on the bus that I was literally on. And I was like, this is crazy. It happened to be a visiting moment at the prison. And so our empty bus sort of filled with folks who were visiting their loved ones. And I just was so um, moved by this is around the corner from me. And here I am running a volunteer program. I'm kind of looking to get involved in the community. And so, unlike anyone in New York City, I was like, how do I get into Rikers Island? And I started volunteering there for about 3 years. I volunteered at Rikers teaching life skills classes on financial
Mm.
literacy or anger management, different classes in that context. And then I saw that there was an opening for someone to teach a class on religion in the prison, and that was my background. And so I started teaching a class on spirituality in the prison. And I mean, what I have learned about the space is that I have never seen people bloom in the same way that I have seen people bloom in a prison school setting.
Mm.
And you have the most eager learners because in a place that feels stagnant, education feels like movement. And so it's thrilling for them and for the faculty to be in this context where people, I mean, I've stepped into classes where the students were so eager to talk about what we were talking about that they started before I got there and they're discussing the book or they're discussing different topics.
Mm.
And so it's a really engaging learning environment. And because I was going in to teach on classes like spirituality in a college level class, I am similar to being a spiritual director. I'm really cognizant that people are coming from all sorts of different experiences, some painful experiences, some very
Mm.
hopeful experiences. Some people describe, um, you know, having a foundation in their family. Other people describe not having any sort of introduction to, spiritual, God, divine, anything the way you call it. And so I love carving out in the classroom setting these places for people to discover. Um,
Mm.
one of the assignments that I've developed over the last, 7 years teaching these types of classes is I have an assignment that is design your own spiritual practice, whatever that means to you, and do it for 30 days. And then tell me how it
I
goes.
love that. I love that.
It is fascinating the things that people come up with. I have seen one student in the class, we came across this Buddhist loving kindness meditation.
Oh,
He
yes,
was
meta.
really, yeah, he was really taken by that. And so his 30-day practice was every single day at 1:30, he would go out onto the yard, he would pick a random place to sit, and whoever was in front of him, he would silently offer them that Buddhist loving kindness
Oh,
meditation.
that's amazing. I
Amazing.
love that.
Well, eventually he was, moving around in enough places that one day, unintentionally, he sat down directly in front of the guard station. And he
Mm.
had to pause and be like, am I willing to bless the guards too? And he
Hmm.
sat with it, and then he's like, everyone is everyone. And he did. He sat and he blessed everyone that was in his line of sight. But it was really moving for him to encounter that question.
Hmm.
There was another student who created a log for his anger. Every
Oh.
time he got angry, he noticed it and he jotted it down. And at the end of each week in the 30 days, he would sit and he would look at that anger log. And sometimes he noticed them and said, why was I even angry about that? Like, that doesn't seem like something worth getting angry about. And he described that by the end of his 30 days, he had so much more information about where his anger showed up, what context, what people it might show up around more than others. And he felt so empowered to be able to navigate and his choices accordingly.
I
There
love
was,
that as a spiritual practice
yeah,
too. That's
absolutely. And
amazing.
I'm really broad in sort of, there was one student who chewed his food. And he actually, I really think he was going to blow off the assignment. He was like, okay, I'm just going to chew and taste my food. And he's a diligent student. So literally every meal, he's like, oh, I have to do my homework. But he marveled at the end. He said, I had digestion issues that sort of calmed down, and I was present in a way that I just wasn't before. So I, again, love cultivating these spaces, especially in that context where people recognize how limited their choices are, to
Hmm.
help them choose who they're becoming or helping them choose agency is thrilling to watch.
Well, yeah, this to me that's incredible because you have a space where you're it's constructed to not feel hope, and um, a human being has to have hope, and so giving them something so small that they can control like that is a form of hope and power. And to
Mhm.
me, that is just amazingly like powerful to do something
Mhm.
that small in a place like that. Now, speaking
Mhm.
of that, people have mixed feelings about prison education,
Yeah.
because some people come from this perspective that, oh, they're in prison, so punishment is it, and there should be nothing else. Um, what are your thoughts for those people, or what would you say to them?
I have encountered that perspective. Sometimes it happens among the guards, like, you know,
Mm,
I have to pay for my kids' education, and these,
and they get
folks
it for
inside are
free.
getting it for free. Yeah.
Mhm.
I can't imagine why we wouldn't want to give people the tools to be critical thinkers, to be able to grow, to learn, and to have a greater possibility of success upon leaving. Most people leave prison. Most people leave prison. They are entering into our communities. They are our neighbors. They are our coworkers. And so being able to offer them tools to be able to understand and what tools we give them are fascinating. A lot of times it's sociology or psychology classes, and you can
Mhm.
hear the reflection in the students of recognizing personal dynamics for their choices, recognizing even the dynamics that they're in. Sometimes the students will be like, I think I understand some of the guards now in a different way because they're building these frameworks for seeing lenses to look through at the world. And I think that is important for everyone. It's one of the ways that we bloom and we grow. And without those tools, people have a harder time of being successful as they
Mhm.
are released. And
100%.
we want them to be more successful.
Yeah, and the strongest correctional education studies show that yes, if they do have this education in the prison system, they are much less likely to go back to prison.
Mm.
It has mixed employment effects, but that makes sense because they're felons and it's harder to get jobs as a felon. But they're less likely to be reincarcerated, which says that context of not just knowing like the self and what happened and how I ended up here, but the more larger, how did we end up here? How did
Mm.
I, within my context, end up here? Which is
Mm.
education is the only way you get that, not just self
Yeah,
reflection, but thinking about
exactly.
how the world works and how humans work. And
I absolutely.
that
That's
everybody should have that.
I agree. I agree. And I, from 10 years of going inside of these contexts and hearing the reactions of many people when I tell them, oh, my job is running a college program in a prison, regularly the first question I get is, are you scared?
Mm.
And I am convinced that collectively as a country, we have watched too much Law and Order.
Right.
We just have all sorts of impressions in our head of what that, context dun 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 might be like. And it is so far from my experience. And for context, I am not working with every individual inside of the prison. I am working with the people who are self-selecting, voluntarily choosing to engage in a college context. So
Mhm.
already I'm narrowing down sort of who I'm interacting with in the prison. But especially in the men's prisons that I work at, I find that people don't even darken the door of applying for college until they're 5, 10, 15 years into their experience. And then many times in the men's prisons, there's a waiting list of a couple years to even get in. So by the time they're sitting in that chair, they are coming so eager to learn, and many of our students, I actually teach a first year experience class for the SUNY system in one of the prisons, and it's called first year experience. It's like newbies. This is your first college class, and we are learning about study skills and we are learning about context. Many of our students are first generation college students, so they don't really have anyone they can talk to about, what does matriculation mean? Or what are
Yeah.
these words? I don't understand. And so in that class, the last class I taught at the beginning of the summer, one of my students was 60 years old and he's starting
Oh,
his experience in college.
I love
And I
that.
find that many of them are in their 40s and 50s. The typical college student inside is much older than a traditional student. And not only do they bring the experience of those decades into their classes, they're not who they were when they were 18 or 20. Just
Mhm.
like you and I might not be the same exact
Oh,
person
God help me. No, I'm
25,
not at all.
right? And so I think when people ask, are you scared? They're not thinking about the 40 or 50-year-old people that I'm interacting with in the classroom who, if they were my neighbor, Aaron, they would be the best neighbor I've ever experienced. They would take that role of neighbor so preciously that
Mhm.
they would relish in that. And yet we think, oh, someone has been inside, lived inside of a prison. I would not want them near, to be my neighbor. And that's not my experience. I feel like being able to carve out opportunities for people, and actually, one thing that's been on my mind the last few months has been here are some folks who are living in high trauma environments daily, and some of them have spent decades in this space.
Mhm.
And while there are, I imagine, many people who have poor coping mechanisms for living in that environment, there are others who have awe-inspiring coping mechanisms for living in that space. And I
I couldn't even
really
imagine.
honestly believe that folks on the outside could benefit from their wisdom. And you might not think, oh, my teacher should be someone who's inside prison, but actually there's amazing wisdom inside of those walls. And again, I offer education to help people with their best chance of communicating that, whether it's over the phone to a loved one or potentially being at the front of the classroom in some form or fashion when they are released or inside. I think there's surprising wisdom in that space in our community.
The being able to like navigate and let go of things that are stressful or that you don't like and not dwelling in misery, that type of oh, you would have to be amazing at that to be able to thrive or flourish in prison. And I also imagine that you have, sounds to me like some of the most fantastic students, that they are there 1000% willingly and want to learn. That's a dream.
It is a dream. And I think that they also yeah, I think that I would love more people on the outside to open themselves. There's actually a group uh, I think it was called Concrete. There was a group of folks inside of a California prison who during the pandemic, they created a guide for lockdown. They were like, all of you are now experiencing the types of things that we're used to. Here's how to help navigate it. And I take, for example, patience. I mean,
Mhm.
you look around and we can be on standing on a line for within 30 seconds, we have all of our phones are whipped out and we need to be entertained. I
Mhm.
have folks inside who have the ability to just sit and wait for their academic advising appointment for
Yeah,
25
look at
minutes,
nothing.
just sitting with themselves. That ability to sit with yourself is something, again, in spiritual direction, I'm helping people cultivate, or,
Mhm.
and yet inside there are folks who are by not maybe by choice, but some of them are experts in patience or experts at even being able to have purpose. Waking
Mhm.
up in that environment, feeling like you have been rejected from the community, and still waking up and finding a way to engage in your day or to find motivation in mentoring or you know, in growing and learning and all these different things is something that again, I don't see everywhere.
No, that is absolutely awe-inspiring. And so many studies of the brain and happiness people have talked to on the podcast have said, being able to sit with yourself and not have a screen, but just sit with yourself is something that is so critical
Yeah.
to flourishing, to happiness. And people have a fear of doing it because they don't know how to. And so getting getting people familiar with just being with yourself,
Yeah.
and look, we can learn so much from the prisons, so much. And
Yeah.
there's also opportunity here for me as this project came on. Of course, I hadn't thought a lot about prison education, but there's opportunities, I think, to help here too. Things like Northeastern, our brand is based upon co-op and internships. And think about ways we can build pipelines for those who leave prison, who are felons. We can build better pipelines for that to help these students in this system. And also thinking about how we can um, do things even better, engage even more, and research. Also, yours is the only population that can't use AI in the world. So
Yeah.
there's so many
Yeah.
opportunities to think about learning and what it
Yeah.
is we're actually teaching and why we're teaching it, and compare that within the prison system and then the rest of the university and universities with the rapidly changing understanding of how learning takes place because of AI. So it's a fascinating moment, especially with what you do, but it's also
It
just worthwhile.
And I find that the prison can be like a petri dish for a school, that if things work in that context, they're probably beneficial outside of the context too. If you
Mhm.
created a brochure that says, here's what college is about, or here's the vocabulary of college, that will be beneficial for learners on the outside as well. I think that there's a lot of room for trialing things, to testing things. And in a weird way, our classroom mimics, a classroom of long ago in that it's a chalk and talk space where I have to turn around and write things on the board at the same speed that my students are writing it in their notebooks. And that is very different than the very quick, very fast, way of learning in classrooms today that I don't even know if that's the speed with which we learn.
I don't think so either. And it's just the speed at which people are used to doing things. But I don't think it's the speed we learn. It's that sort of bam, bam, and here's some slides, here's some slides, here's some other, and it's a lot. And the brain doesn't get to slow down and actually pause and say, but wait a minute, but huh? Right? And I
Yeah.
don't get it. And make different connections. That's a slower process. You
It
can't rush
is.
it.
And if you speak to the faculty who teach on campus and teach in this context, they are often greatly moved by how they need to adapt certain questions that they're used to asking for a context of learners who maybe are watching the news, who are tuned in things, who are
Hmm.
have wisdom and life experiences, who may or may not have experienced some of the things that you're assuming. Like it's a really interesting space for the teacher to redesign their classes as well. And I think having done that, it helps and benefits the students again who are in the traditional classrooms as well.
I love the fact that everything that I've learned about prison education has made has blown my mind. Is always better and more incredible than I even imagined. So I sent my academic director, who oversees the program, the academic program that these students are feeding into. He went down to visit, and it blew his mind. He came back like angels singing out of his head. He was like, it was incredible. He was so just impressed and in awe and inspired just by being and visiting for a little bit.
One day, yeah.
Mhm.
It's a area in our community that a lot of people only imagine about. They don't have access to it, and so therefore it's impressions that are often shaping people's understanding. And the reality is one of the reasons why I think it is so sacred to the students inside is at least what I'm trying to cultivate in the prison that I'm working in is that there are prison politics, there are prison dynamics. I am noticing different dynamics among the women than among the men. I mean, there's all sorts of different pieces at play. And yet, usually a prison education program can have carve out some sort of space, like a computer lab or a learning center or a space. And one of the things that we're doing and working really hard to is creating a different culture. When you step across the threshold of that classroom that you're going into, or when you step into that learning center, we are creating a different experience than you are experiencing in any other, in the housing units, on the yard, all these other places in the prison context. And it allows students to sort of shed, in a way, a certain role that they're used to being in, and now they are learners, they are students. Part of what I'm coaching, especially the women, is to like be there's a perfectionism challenge
Mhm.
in this space where students in their writing 101 classes want to get, A plus plus in the first assignment that they turn in.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've seen that in some other places
Yes.
as well. And so helping the students recognize that their job is to not know, and their job is to learn, and their job is to receive, and their job is it is a very different posture than sometimes the like, you know, persona that you have to sort of be in other areas. And I find, again, that's why I say a prison education program is the place where I've seen people bloom the most, because it's
Mhm.
allowing them to be, I think the trajectory of becoming an academic is recognizing you have something to offer. You don't start there,
Mhm.
but you learn and you stand on the shoulders of the others who have come before you. And then from your unique perspective and context, you add to it. And we have students who are on that journey where they start to recognize the wisdom that they have to offer. And it is beautiful to see.
Yeah. It's also, I imagine, would be, unlike the rest of the prison yard, a place of building your future as opposed to surviving now. So there's hope that I will know more, become better, do XYZ. And you can see that growth that is internal. It's in
Mhm.
how you understand yourself and ideas and the world and arguments and everything that made everything to be.
Yeah. And it is delightful, especially around like right after Thanksgiving, around finals time in both semesters. The learning centers that we get to spend time in really sound like libraries on a college campus. The
Hmm.
conversations that are happening, the even, and I'm told this happens on the yard too, is that it is like debates come, or learning groups emerge, folks, math is does not tend to be our students' strength. And so when they're heading into math tests and that they're creating, formulating, small groups to study for the math exams, like that's a different conversation that is they'd be having otherwise in that
Yes,
context. And
exactly.
it inspires, actually, the facility that I'm at. It's a small facility, and so we have, I'm proud to say, the greatest percentage of college students at our facility across New York State.
Hmm.
Again, it's a small facility, so that number is easier to get to. It's
Relative.
a quarter of the facility is in college. And if you talk to
That's
the
amazing.
administrators inside of prisons, they'll tell you if you are in a prison that has college versus a college that doesn't, or a prison that doesn't have college, you can feel the difference. You can
Mm.
feel the inspiration of people. And again, it's not everyone, but there's a pathway for people who do want to grow in that way, and it can be contagious for others inside of the prison who maybe never assumed that or of their journey, and they are all of a sudden, sometimes they'll be like, that person, I knew them when, and now they sound different. And will that
That's
happen to me? I
education.
want that. I want
Yeah.
that.
Well, and it's the thing I love too is it's people assume now, oh, education is something you just can Google it. You can't. What
Yeah.
has happening with them can only happen through the process of a classroom and learning and conversation that you can't just Google and read and be like, now I know it and I'm a mature thinker. Right?
Well,
Doesn't
and
work
just the
like that.
fact that there's required classes that you might never choose yourself, but then maybe introduce you into a topic. I remember my freshman year of college. I don't even know if I knew what the word anthropology was, and now I have a master's degree in cultural
Yeah.
anthropology. And again, I will never make the big bucks. I went for theology and anthropology, but I
English
use
professor
these
here.
things all the time. All the time. I am like stepping into I'm creating cultures inside of the prison, and I'm helping people recognize the tools within them that they have access to. So again, it is was well worth my education, but I will never make the big bucks.
Me neither. Now, we've already talked almost our whole time, so I only have two questions left for you.
Okay.
One is if you have any advice you'd like to give our listeners just in the world, what would you say?
I would say that in the same way that I invite the students to a 30-day spiritual pilgrimage, that you can make those choices too. Within the limitations that they have, they come up with really creative ways to address the things that they want to address in their life, whether that is a longing that they want to pay attention to, or a habit that they want to build, or um, you know, area that they want to grow in. I feel like we also have access to small, little, tiny, measurable tweaks that we can commit to for a certain period of time, whether that's a week or a month or a season or a year. And I find that that kind of incremental growth really adds up in becoming who you want to be.
I love that. And the examples you gave, amazing. Those are wonderful. So
They're
yes, that's
doable.
great
They're
advice. Yeah.
doable.
Yeah. And the last question is, what song would you like to add to the Happy US playlist?
This is a question I've been pondering. For some context, I am a swimmer and
Mm.
I swim probably 4 to 7 times a week.
Wow. Yeah, you are a
This is
swimmer,
how,
swimmer.
yeah, I'm a swimmer, and I'm a swimmer because I never considered myself a morning person, and I will now wake up in like the 5 o'clock hour in order to get to the pool.
That's that's
Crazy
that's
fun.
devotion to swimming.
Yeah, exactly. And one thing that I love about that space, I put earplugs in my ear, goggles on my eyes, and I am just in this like alternate non-screen universe where I
Mm.
can just be. And I think that's part of my draw is just like that context. And sometimes songs will pop into my head and I'll learn what kind of mood I'm in. Like sometimes it'll be like shout shout, swim it all out. These are the things
I
that I swim about.
love that.
But, and it happened again this morning. I have no idea why this became my happy song. But the song that pops out, I don't even know the whole song. I only know one line of the song, but it is, "Oh, what a beautiful morning. Oh, what a beautiful day."
Yeah, that's
From
from Singing
Oklahoma.
in Oklahoma. Yes.
Oklahoma.
Yes.
And because I was doing research and I know that you have a playlist, the Ray Charles version. It's like a
Oh,
poppy
perfect.
jazz kind of version rather than the
Yeah.
like, I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I
So,
love that. Yes, I will put that on. That's beautiful. That song reminds me, my My kids and I and then dad, we would sing stuff like that all the time. And one person just starts singing it, and then we're like, oh, now we all got it, and we're all just
Yeah,
belt it
in the
because you
car.
got to, got to.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's one of them. Oh, what a
Carpool
beautiful morning.
karaoke is sometimes required for happiness,
Oh,
occasionally.
I especially in Boston, let me tell you.
Yeah, because you're in the
Yeah,
car all the time.
all the
What are you
time,
gonna
and
do? What are you gonna
what are you
do?
gonna what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? I'm walking here. Yeah. Look, I am so honored that I get to know your work better and see it now and learn about it. It is phenomenal. Thank you, thank you, thank you for what you're doing.
Well, I am so pleased that I get to be a part of your team and someone who getting to work for someone who thinks about happiness is a dream.
Well, the good thing is, at in our unit, we're all on the same page. We're all doing different versions of the same thing, which is making the world better for more people. Every so everyone can be happier. Right?
Let's do it.
That's good enough. Yeah. Thank you for being here so much, and thank you to everyone for listening. Until next time, bye-bye. Bye. Just two more questions. One is, what would you hope for this field, the future of happiness, flourishing? What are your hopes?
Well, my hope is actually so with my colleague, we've just written a book that's going to be published later this year, actually bringing together acceptance and commitment therapy, dialectical behavior therapy, and flow theory to talk about
Oh,
how you actually thrive in life despite the highs and lows that life inevitably brings.
mm,
That's my actual hope for for this whole area is that we learn the skills so that we can actually the skills and mindsets really so
mm,
that we can feel and function well in life even as life brings the up and downs that it inevitably brings. So instead of this sense of I have to be doing well all the time and we're just always improving on this linear pathway, life happens. And how do I actually manage life when when things go off course so that I don't become completely overwhelmed and really struggle, end up in that place of, with my struggles with mental illness, I would love if others did not have to end up there. If we could actually give them tools, give them environments and everything so that they can actually weather the storms of life without experiencing mental illness or not going into severe mental illness. So
mm,
maybe it's just a
mhm.
bit of depression and anxiety that they can recover from. The other thing I would hope for the field really, and this goes along with my work, is to have that more systems informed view. So we're really thinking about the person within the context that they're actually living and existing within. And so really thinking about the complexity that that brings, but also the opportunities to create yet unimagined futures for me, for you, and for every person.
Well, I can tell you that I am so grateful that you and your colleague wrote this book because the logic of it comes from a place of a person who truly understands it.
Yeah.
And that doesn't happen very much. Not for anybody's fault, but just their own
Right.
experience was different. And so I
Yeah.
want to thank you for using your experience and what you've struggled with to really help, to really help. That's what matters. That's why I do this.
Yeah.
And um, thank you for that. Thank you for that work. It matters a lot.
I really do believe that it matters. And I do share my own story in the book to make it unlike, this is the lived reality,
Yeah.
and with that, we can break down stigma around mental illness, but also give people tools and strategies so that they can actually move towards the life well lived.
Perfect. Thank you. And the last question is my favorite. You get one song you'd like to add to the Happy US playlist, any song on earth that you can name.
Oh, goodness. So, um, I don't remember the name of the song. I can follow up and give you the song. But there's a lyric in it that it says that um, tears are the shape of seeds. that I'm paraphrasing it. So it's talking about tears and how like that they're the shape of seeds. And it's the idea that from the tears, actually that becomes the growth for new life.
Mm.
And I think it's such a beautiful image of saying, of not sort of disavowing the emotions that we have, but actually saying that from that emotion can be the spring of life for me, for you, and for everybody. So
Yeah.
I'll let you know the name of the song.
Thank you so much. And yes, those seeds now produced a book that I'm thrilled is coming out. Thank you
I'm thrilled
so
as well.
much. Thank you so
Oh,
much for
such a
talking with
pleasure.
me. It was absolutely amazing. It was the best way to spend my Sunday afternoon with you on your Monday morning. So thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And thank you to everyone for listening. Until next time. Bye bye.